Don't gotta explain myself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DGXM podcast with Dea and Rock. Don't gotta explain myself. Today we have a very special guest from the world of AI, Enea, who is an Albanian founder of FSFM, company called Find Stocks for Me, which uses social voting, machine learning, and artificial intelligence to basically help you create the best stocks and investment portfolio there is on the market. And being one of the few Albanians in the field that have really created new ingenuity when it comes to pairing up financial interests and also AI, we are so happy to have him on the show. And yeah, welcome.
Thank you, Dea. Yes, I'm glad to be here. Just like you said, I'm Albanian, just like the other two. Just want to show you guys this on stream real quick.
Let's see it. Let's see it. Let's see it. What's the surprise here?
Here's some traditional clothing from Albania that I have
Where is this
hung
from?
up on my
What
wall.
region?
This is actually, I got this in Girocaster, but it's supposed to be similar to what people wear in Chamarilla as well, which is where I'm from.
I was gonna say it looks like something southern. It
Hikey
looks
is
pretty
so
cool.
clean. It is so clean. I would love to wear this out in the club, but yeah, just want to show you
You
guys
could.
this.
You could. Realistically, you could
Some big brand will steal it. Like, you'll see
wear
it.
wear it with a nice pair of Jordans.
Yeah.
How's it going, though, man? Nice to meet you here. We're happy to have you on the podcast.
I appreciate it and glad to be here.
I'm excited to hear a little bit about AI, not the AI, the basketball that we always think about
Yeah.
here, but
Allen
AI,
Iverson.
which is AI, something that's become kind of unique in the Albanian world too, because we have another female who works with AI,
Morati.
Mira Morati. So it's very interesting that Albanians now are starting to get into this world of AI. It's like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
So where did that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, Mia Murati is an inspiration for us all. She's, she's leading right now one of the main companies that are developing AI. We're talking about OpenAI at the moment, so very proud of her. Glad that we have an Albanian up there and showing what we can do. My story of AI really started, junior year of college, and at that point, I spent the first 2 years exploring the breadth of computer science. So we're talking about seeing how Android app development works, seeing how iOS app development works, how front end works, how back end works, how scientific computing, touched every single field a little bit. And then I actually just fell in love with the AI field. And I just saw, as we can see now, 5 years later, that it could have a very strong impact in the future.
When you talk about the future right now, first questions first. Is AI going to take over our normal lives? Are we going to be seeing robots at the grocery store? AI robot girlfriends, is that a thing coming in or not?
So yeah, you guys remember when YouTube first started having ads online? It's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. The ads are gonna be once a week. You won't even notice them. And now we have like 2 or 3 ads for every video. So I'm not gonna be one of those AI guys who'll be like, no, it's not gonna change the world. No, there's not gonna be any AI girlfriends. All of that is in the realm of responsibility and the possibility, and it is our responsibility as humans to understand where to draw the border and what's best for us and for the future of humanity.
Touching base off of what you just said with the ads, it's gotten to the point where now the ads, it just kind of just reads off of your mind, and the next thing you pop up on your Instagram or Facebook is something you're thinking of, not even speaking out loud. So it's crazy how AI has really progressed over the years.
True.
Yeah.
I think people have this perception of AI as being a mind reading service, but let's address that a little bit. Let's explain to people who may be coming in from a different background, what is artificial intelligence, how it collects intelligence, and then uses it to make decisions, essentially.
Yeah, so when we talk about AI and we talk about machine learning, we can think of it as a superset and a subset within the field of AI, right? So when we say AI, there can be a lot of different definitions on how people define AI. I mean, for example, I had a conversation once with one of my friends who was in this networking company, and they told me like, yeah, we have AI in our company too. And then when we look into it, it was all just if and else statements. So if person 6'3", then call him tall, otherwise call him short, kind of thing. But in my book, that is a little bit too primitive to be considered, actually AI, because what AI should be is basically a task that would require human intelligence to be able to perform, if that makes sense. So anything that a computer is able to do that before computers needed human interaction, just human intelligence, but now it can be done just by the computer. That's what I would consider AI. Now, when we talk about machine learning is a subset of AI where we focus on specifically algorithms that are built to learn from data and exactly that, to be able to find patterns within data and being able to use those patterns to predict what some XYZ think. Now, there's other fields of AI that don't fall into machine learning. There's some, for example, simple deterministic pathfinding algorithms that you can consider AI, like, let's say Jigsaw's algorithm. I would consider that AI to some extent. But in general, machine learning is the field that, a computer learns through data.
Okay. And that makes sense in a way, because when you think about the programming of robots that we see often displayed online and how they become more intelligent in understanding you, they're really just receiving more data and then recognizing those patterns over time in a way that's more efficient. Therefore, they can analyze you quicker, and their analysis of you becomes more exponential than potentially a human over time.
Yes.
How they are wired in that way, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and you can have, AI that is focused on specific tasks, right? So right now, the very big question in AI is like, can we make this like general intelligence algorithm that can perform any task like a human can, But we've had for years AI that can perform singular tasks better than humans. Like, for example, an AI that is able to, translate from one language to another. Right, we would see that from Google Translate way before this huge explosion of large language models, and at some extent it was better than any kind of human at that field.
Yeah, nowadays you have even Chat GPT where you can just ask them to completely translate books or a whole language or something you don't know, and it completely does it for you now, and it's very amazing to see how far that's advanced.
Yeah,
I know I use it for a lot of things, so it's pretty cool to see where it's going.
Yeah, I use, ChatGPT. There's other services out there. I also use like Claude. I prefer Claude for a lot of things. But ChatGPT 4.0 is pretty strong, and ChatGPT 5 is super hyped. So it's going to come out soon. So who knows? But yeah, this field of like, these large language models that we see nowadays, this is a new development in machine learning, and it actually exploded way, way faster than we expected, right? So the very beginning of these large language models that we currently consider, like the pinnacle are when the development of the transformer architecture started in 2017. That's not the only way to make these language models. There's some recurrent neural network options as well. But it's a new field, and if you ask any AI expert from 4 years ago, like where AI would be today, they probably wouldn't have guessed it would have, expressed itself this quickly.
I really appreciate that and the explanation you provided, because it helps dispel a lot of myths about the field. And oftentimes people are afraid about what they don't know and the information that they lack, which is why they say that ignorance kills. And people oftentimes misuse terms. Like they'll say, I saw an AI created. Can you create an AI for me? Which is really interesting because there's so many different types of AI. There's visual, there's non-visual, there's programmatic, there's translation, and it comes in all different forms. But going into this ethical discussion and ethical debate about whether AI is good or bad has been very popular, but also very simplified. And I know you have a philosophy background as well. You have a double major in computer science and philosophy. So I wanted to ask you about that, your perception about AI and where it's going philosophically.
Yeah, so let's talk about AI that we currently have, and we're talking about, as advanced as you could possibly make, let's say the ChatGPT world of things, like large language models such as transformers. People really do say that, hey, we're gonna like make some general intelligence out of this. I think we're still very, very far from this case. So we're not talking about, having these transformer architectures develop sentience under it and then being able to actually perform like a conscious being. But the question again was like how the future is going to look like, basically. Can you rephrase the question?
the ethics of the utilization of AI.
Yeah, yes. You know, at the moment it's overhyped from, you know, what it can actually do, and we're still really feeling that, you know, effect. I'm not saying in the future there won't be some further developments. There's already a lot of research being done for, you know, different types of architectures, and don't get me started about the potential of machine learning and like quantum computers as well. But in my opinion, for the ethics side of things, like, you know, humans have the tendency, especially if there's, you know, ongoing threats of war, things like that, to develop technology way faster than we develop ethics. Therefore, you know, we see this graph of technology exploding upwards, and ethics has kind of remained stagnant with a slight increase. You know, if it was up to me, I'd tell people like, hey, for the next 5 years, let's just stop developing this AI, this technology, and just figure it out. You know, this is not something that one person can say, this is X, this is bad, this is, you know, good. Like, we need to really hone the population to really understand the ethics of these things and try to figure it out. You know, do I believe sometime in the future there will be a case where we make AI, and not in the present sense of it, but like in the future sense of it, when we're talking about high-minded AIs and again quantum computers, a sentient being? Probably, and I'm not saying that's impossible.
That's it.
But
So you think sentient in terms of actually having consciousness?
yeah,
So like the Will Smith movie.
but we are extremely far from that. You know, like for example, you know, we know more about the moon that we know about the bottom of the sea, right? The bottom of the ocean, and we know more about the bottom of the ocean than we know about consciousness at the end of the day. You know, so for example, if you really think about it as a, you know, a dualist versus a monist approach of the mind, you know, if we can really define the mind as this like chemical engine that, you know, sentience evolves from, then yes, it should be possible for us to develop AI that creates sentience. If there's a dualist approach to it where we have both the chemical aspect but there's also a spiritual aspect of the consciousness, then there's a possibility that we probably won't be able to get there with AI. So it really depends on where you fall into that.
But does AI kind of fall towards the limits of what we know as well too, or does it exceed like what we know? Because like as you just mentioned, like the bottom of the ocean, we don't know what's completely at the bottom of the ocean. So now, is there some sort of way where AI knows more than we know, or it can only be programmed so far to what we know? You know?
No, I think it could definitely know things that we don't, right? Because like we could think about it this way. You know, humans with their eyes, they can see a certain range of the color spectrum, but there's other animals that like the mantis shrimp, I think, or whatever, has like, you know, a much larger range of color spectrum that they can see. So what this kind of tells us is, you know, biological animals are not really created in a sense to understand the world. It's created to live in it, to be able to survive in it, right? So there is probably a lot of information out there that is being abstracted to us through the sensory inputs that we have. But with AI, we can have things that we potentially don't have, right? Like for example, let's talk about this. You know, we make an AI that has, you know, sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing, right? Now, if we add another sense there, it's like, hey, like let's make this AI also, you know, feel electromagnetic waves. At this point, you know, it has a sixth sense that humans don't have, and potentially information that we currently don't have. So it can make other decisions because of that.
True. So like iRobot.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Where do you fall on the spectrum of understanding or believing that AI models can or cannot have a spiritual dimension, and how that can play into their creation? So to be sentient would mean to have awareness and connection to a spiritual dimension of who you are. Although not even all humans have that. Many are just automatically programmed. They just perceive, they don't really think that much about the world. But where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so there's this concept in philosophy called like a zombie, right? So in the sense, like, are we able to make a thing that doesn't have consciousness but acts exactly like it's conscious, to the point that is like completely differentiable with just a normal conscious human being, right? So the first question about that, like, do I think AI will ever reach that kind of zombie consciousness? Yes, I think we will definitely reach a point where it will be passing the Turing test and whatever, But, talking about spiritually, at least me, who's a little bit more romantic about how the mind works, and that I don't really believe it's, complete deterministic, will AI computers have a soul? I don't think so. I think souls are something that have to be tied to just a derivation directly from nature, rather than a derivation from a byproduct of nature, which the byproduct of nature is humans, and the derivation of that is AI, if that makes sense.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, because I hear, like, on Joe Rogan, I listen to podcasts, and Joe Rogan, whenever he has people who work with AI on his podcast, he always talks about the fear of, what if AI comes to life and now it has a soul and it has a mind and it has this. So it's very interesting to see, as what kind of pros can come from it and what kind of cons and dangers can come from it too. And it's happening so fast where you can't even, not even the person creating it can kind of control it either,
Yeah. And they're so complex too at the end of the day. But there's big barriers that we still have to pass, right? For example, some of the strongest, biggest AIs that we currently have, take data through just text, right? But humans learn mostly through sight, and that's a way larger data pipeline than it is reading, for example. So there's a lot that's we still don't understand about the human mind, and just how simple it is to make such complex architectures, compared to just like AI that, we talking about ChatGPT-4, which probably has trillions of parameters in it. It's way larger and way stronger than a human mind.
Yes.
Yeah,
the dog is
but not
with
more efficient.
AI.
Yeah, because now I've seen things like Neuralink too, with like Elon Musk. Something like Neuralink, is that using AI to power it, or?
Yeah, at some point, yeah. I haven't really done too much research on Neuralink, but I'm pretty sure it's a neural network that has learned how to deal with, chemical human brain network processes. Yeah,
It's amazing. It's really amazing to see what all of this is it's really doing for people and
How do we
humanity.
know if it's a deep fake or not, especially with elections coming up?
Ooh, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, again, we're talking about deep fakes and how they are at the moment. We are just getting started with this technology. Like, there is so much more we can do with deep fakes, to the point that it will completely be indistinguishable. Like, at the moment, we can still get that uncanny valley feeling with a lot of the deep fakes, even though they're getting really good, that we can kind of sense the deep fake. There's a lot of solutions to deal with this kind of issues, but it goes back to the, hey, technology is exploding. How about we take a step back a little bit and talk about the ethics of this? Like, where should it be used, where it shouldn't be used, and how, if it's used in these different sectors, how it should be mitigated or controlled in such a way that it doesn't limit the freedom of development in that sector, but instead, like, limits the harm it can do to humanity.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
do you think it should be regulated? Do you think AI is something that there should be a different hand, maybe a more social or legislative hand into maneuvering?
I mean, like, high key, if you ask me, like, we're talking about more social, I think everything should be decided more socially. I mean, this is one of the inspirations behind findstocksforme.com, this idea of wisdom of the crowds, and how I think, if we really gather everyone's opinion and we can really get there, I think we can find one of the shortest routes to prosperity as a civilization. But regulation, I think there's definitely going to be need for some level of regulation, because they are bad players. Again, it's a very complicated and multi-sided issue, because if United States regulates AI and how we develop certain fields and how we use it, but let's say some other XYZ country doesn't, they will have this competitive advantage over the United States in certain things that we are, too ethical to pursue and too ethical to regulate, etc.
Yeah, because how would you differentiate what's real and what's not? Because it's gotten to the point where now you see certain videos where they use voiceovers with somebody's voice, and you think it's them, and it's really not them. And it's like, it's for some people who probably listen to these certain famous people and you understand, oh, maybe this is real or not. There's a lot of people that don't realize that this is fake. And how are you able to differentiate that in a more broader subject, like say with the government related issues? Say if somebody's trying to steal money from you, or like how the heck do you even catch these people? Or like how are you able to distinguish what's real and what's not?
Yeah, and like you brought up a good point. Like for example, I can kind of see, sometimes I'm fooled too, but I can kind of see, this is deep faked or not. But this reminds me, Rock, of like if you've ever played like FIFA in front of your grandparents, it's obviously a game. It looks like cartoons playing, but they think it's a real game, So it's that, at least that generation is so much more gullible than our generation to be able to get caught up with the deep fakes. And I mean, look, there's solutions, but there's also solutions to solutions, right? Like, for example, we have machine learning that makes deep fakes. Well, we can make a machine learning that can classify if something is deep fake or not, But then once we make this machine learning, the deep fake machine learning can now learn how to fool that, So it's this endless cycle of like solving each other, if that makes sense. So there has to be some regulation where we don't just say, okay, like you one up me, let me one up you, and let me one up you to a point that is catastrophic, and at least one side leads the way.
Interesting.
It's complicated. It's and there's very few people, I would say, that say they have the answer and truly believe they have the answer to this. It's again very new, and we did not expect it to be here as quickly as it is. But at the end of the day, we can't just focus on the little things. There's also very positive aspects of this AI developing.
So what would you tell younger people that are interested in the field? And the field has become a bit more of a folk mysticism to a lot of people that don't understand it. So they're even afraid to take a Java introductory class, which I did. Actually, I took advanced Java without even taking an introductory to Java class, which I don't recommend anyone do. But how would you encourage them, and what baby steps should they take to understand the field?
Yeah, so newsflash, guys, coding is going to be a thing that we're probably going to be teaching elementary school students in the future. It's not something that's going to be a profession anymore, really. It's just going to be something that humans do all the time. So the thing is, at the end of the day, like, this is my opinion, and I'm just gonna go a little bit of a ramble here. I've heard people say like, hey, like I want to get to accounting, but I don't like the programming classes. Like, can I become an accountant without programming? Sure, you can, but the thing is, if you actually learn how to program, you won't be left behind by people who are accountants and know how to program, and they can solve problems quicker than you. And so this you can still move on in life, without learning the skills of coding in the future. We're not talking now, we're talking about 20 years from now, 10 years from now. But it's good for all of us to develop some level of understanding of how to code. And now to talk about the fear of getting to the field and how you can overcome it. I believe there's going to be, first of all, new tools that's going to help people learn how to code. Coding is going to be completely different in the future how it has been so far. Because again, if you've ever tried to code with a large language model, you can ask it to do something for you, and it'll just spit out code that is probably correct, probably not. It depends on how complicated the the ask is, but it can do that. But it's take it a step at a time. Don't jump in like you did, without doing introductory classes. Go straight to advanced. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. But at the end of the day, they're called programming languages for a reason, right? Because there's different syntax you need to learn. But what's more important is understanding the abstract layer under it, if that makes sense. So like what you said before was, I learned Java, right? There's JavaScript, there's Python, there's C++, there's Rust, there's, a new one that came out called Bend, all these different things, right? There's hundreds of programming languages. But what people need to get good at is programming thinking, right? Not being like, hey, like I make a class in Java by writing this, and that. No, I have to understand, hey, how do I think as a programmer? That's number one way how to actually learn the field.
I think that's beautiful, Enea. And I think you've broken down the pedagogical aspect of learning how to program as well in a way that a professor would. So I think you should come out with a coding boot camp. And I will sign up to review a couple of things. And I think a lot of people would be interested in that. But it's really important because you can learn how to code in any language, but the idea is you should be able to learn how to code in any language after you've adopted one, because you should know how to think in that way and then adopt different details to it. But just to sidetrack a little bit from the coding conversation, although we can go into the depths of this, we want to ask, what does a programmer do on their time off? Because there's a stereotype of programmers online, and there's the reality of programmers and how they just live their lives. What do you do for fun?
What I do for fun, it's it really, if we're talking about the stereotypical programmer, they probably never close the TV screen once they're done programming. From the computer screen when they're programming, they just hop on a game, spread some democracy or do some other kind of game online. But for me, I have my own hobbies. I play guitar. I do martial arts. I've been doing MMA for a while now.
MMA, did you?
Yeah. And yeah, that's the guitar, MMA. I've started reading more finally, because high school took away my love for reading what I had in middle school, so I'm finally finding it again. But yeah, just staying active and kind of closing the screen. It's not all about the internet, if that makes sense. Because I always think about this, right? It's just like, we're playing this game and this game is on this server somewhere, and you spend, like let's say you're playing World of Warcraft, right? And like you spent all this time, so much of your life playing World of Warcraft. At the end of the day, what are you doing? You're just flipping bits, those zeros and ones on someone's computer, and that's all you're doing. So like, do you want your whole life to be virtual? So you need to close your laptop and do something that's real, if that makes sense. That someone can't just shut off a server and then it's gone forever.
Unless this whole thing is a simulation, and they can.
Yeah. At that point, we are in the server. So at that point, do as you will.
That's really cool. In terms of what you like to do for fun, you are a musician, you play the guitar, you do martial arts, and I know you've competed in a couple of tournaments in the past. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, this was a while ago when I was younger. This is when I was 16. When I was 16, I got a back injury called spondylolisthesis, and that kind of took me out from sports for a while. But I did some Naga tournaments. I did some IBJJF tournament. Came out first, some of them, second, some of them, the usual. Yeah.
Nice. And you say you're a UFC fan, right?
Big UFC fan. I don't have cauliflower here though. I'm not hiding it.
I'm a UFC fan too. Who's your favorite? Who's like somebody you look up to?
High key, right now, probably my favorite fighter is the Sandman, Corey Sandhagen.
Interesting. All right, good choice.
I love it.
Like
I love Corey's style. Like it's like the way more advanced version of mine. So I love watching him, exhibit what it can do.
He's a heck of a striker. I know him for sure. I'm a huge UFC fan, so I know that for sure. I like that.
Oh, we can talk about UFC all the time. We can talk about UFC all the time. How about you?
Do that.
Who's your favorite?
Do that. My favorite at the moment has been Alex Pereira.
Yeah,
I think
of course.
He's coming to the sport. Yeah, he's coming to the sport by storm now, and he's just been taking over, man. And he could be the first 3 champion belt holder. So that's going to be pretty insane. It could happen.
It's funny
And
because Israel opened up that can of worms by saying, "Oh yeah, Alex Pereira is going to be that guy at a bar saying how he beat me once, and he just
yeah,
opened that can of worms because now Alex Pereira is about to be a 3 division
yeah,
champ."
he's like the Terminator, man. It seems like he
Yeah,
was created by AI.
yeah, and if you
So
see him fight, he's like terrifying, because like where does he get that
speaking
power from?
of
Yeah.
AI and UFC matches and just fighting in general, hot topic. If Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg were to fight, who would win? I have my opinion, but what's yours?
Mark Zuckerberg versus Elon Musk. I think Mark would completely dominate. Sadly, it's
Yeah.
like I'll just say this: if someone's never done jujitsu in their life or any kind of submission sport, they don't know how easily you'll be manhandled by someone who has proper experience with it.
Yeah,
You know,
it's insane.
it's different from striking. With striking, if you're just throwing hands at someone, anyone has a chance of knocking someone out. But once you get on the ground and a submission specialist like Mark Zuckerberg gets a hold of you, you're not getting out unless you're good. So that's just how
Yeah.
it is. But
Elon needs his robots.
yeah, exactly. But talking about UFC, and about AI, I've always like dreamt about I'm always thinking about these ideas of like how it could be, included here or not. We have the possibility now to basically mimic, fighter styles by having enough data on how they fight, right? So if we actually like have, let's say Alex Pereira is in boot camp learning, and he's gonna fight Tom Aspinall for the heavyweight champ. If Alex Pereira had the right technology, he could quite literally take out the statistics of Tom Aspinall and try to figure it out and simulate how the fight would go. So that's just how if Conor McGregor needs an AI guy, I can tell him the way to go so you can figure out how Michael Chandler fights and figure out a game plan against him.
That's that's amazing, man. That's amazing. So does virtual reality fall into AI or no?
Honestly, that's a good question that I don't know the answer to. I mean, I'm pretty sure at like the fundamental level of calling something virtual reality, it is simply, how would I explain it? It's a sensory uh
Like
it's sensory stimulant that's far away from our concept of screens, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So it doesn't have to be just visual. It could be sound as well for VR, but it doesn't technically need AI to work.
Okay.
But I might be wrong about that. I'm not quite sure. Yeah.
Figure I ask because now virtual reality and AI are two major components in like the technological world at the moment. So
Feel that virtual reality can be powered by AI. Like if you have goggles on that transport you into a virtual reality scenario or simulation, you can have images or actors in there that learn you over a certain period of time and interact with you. But it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be powered by AI, is what Enea is saying as well, which is interesting. But FSFM is powered by AI, and I want to get into that discussion a little bit as well. So Find Stocks for me, as we mentioned, is an AI-powered stocks analysis tool that uses social voting and machine learning to help you generate a better stocks portfolio, be kind of like an on-spot advisor, but also helps increase the ability of people to learn about AI and how to use it when trying to decide stocks. It makes the process of being an investor more democratic and more equal. I want to understand how you thought of the idea and where the process is now.
Yeah, so let's just go to the idea of why I created Find Stocks for me. It's this concept of, hey, AI is a very powerful tool that we use to make decisions all the time. Voting is also a very powerful tool we use to make decisions all the time, right? So what if there's problems that can be tackled using both AI and voting, two tools that we use to make very important decisions, right? And this can be answered in a lot of fields that have really hard questions, but what better field than, the stock market itself? Because the stock market is something that, like, even if you ask the best quant developers, like, hey, like, how good are stock prediction algorithms? Like, they'll probably say 51-49%, but what if we can combine, the idea of social voting with AI to, in a sense, help us better those chances and show that, hey, we don't have to keep these tools separate. We can combine these tools to make better decisions. So I'll explain it through how, Find Stocks for me works first, the core concept, and we can talk about all these features. And then afterwards, we can talk about, philosophizing how this can be used in some other places as well. Or actually, let's do the opposite. Let's talk about how it can be used, let's say, for political voting, right? Let's say there's 100 people want to be president, right? You're not going to just give these 100 people to the voters' hands and you say, pick one of them. What if, for example, we have an AI that is ethically built and built for the purpose of finding the candidates that are most fit for the role of president? And from these 100 people, only 5 are chosen. So then these 5 are actually provided to the users, to the voters for that political election, right? So this has the power of, AI that will look at all this different data. We're not talking about, what each individual person will look at, but all the data for the people, what education they have, what, achievements they've occurred throughout their life, other kinds of, video data or whatever it has to be to show like, hey, this person is a good candidate, or hey, this guy's actually just using, some kind of manipulation tactics into society to be able to get the vote as president. So it'll help us filter down filter down the options to a core set, and then that important decision is made by the voters. The same concept is coming with the stock market, right? If you've heard about Miller's Law is this idea that, humans can kind of only have 5 plus or minus 2, or is it 7 plus or minus 2 things in their mind at the same time. So with the stock market having tens of thousands of different stocks, you're going to get tired. You're going to have so many things in mind that you can't really focus on any of them, right? So one of the core features of Find Stocks for me is I wrote this algorithm that basically picks 5 stocks for you. That's where the name comes from. Every week,
right after it's selected, after a rigorous
exactly
selection process.
So after looking at the thousands and thousands of different choices every week, it picks 5 for you. So now, as a beginner, you're not going to be lost in the sauce in the ocean of stocks and not knowing where to start. You have these 5 that are chosen by a very advanced algorithm, right? And you can focus on these 5. Now, we allow users and Find Stocks for me to focus on these 5 by implementing more machine learning and as well as voting, right? So we're and social media in a sense. So we have a large language model on the website, and you can ask the large language model basically any kind of question about those stocks chosen. So, like if one of the stocks chosen is Tesla, you can be like, hey, what senators have invested in Tesla? Oh, hey, what are the analyst recommendations for Tesla? Or please provide me a chart for Tesla, or give me a rating from 1 to 100 in Tesla, or, what are the main criticisms, et cetera, et cetera. You can have a conversation with a chatbot to get more information about these stocks. And you can also have access to the social media side of things where you can hear people's opinions, right? So not only have a large language model talking to you about what's happening with Tesla at the moment, but you will have the public's opinion. Because at the end of the day, when stocks go up or down, it's really this concept of how many people are buying or selling, right? It is almost like it was in the crowds in the first place. So combining the AI with the people's opinion to finally make you decide on how to vote for the 5 stocks. And that's the last step of the process. Because when everyone in the community of Find Stocks for me votes, I can conglomerate those votes to get a concept of a Condorcet winner. And I can talk about this more afterwards. But the Condorcet winner will basically tell the users, hey, here are the 5 stocks, and this is what the public believes in the most out of these 5 stocks. And then you can do whatever you want with that information.
Which is so important because, as we've seen throughout history, a lot of stock success has been correlated to perception and imagination and social pushes towards something, which makes this whole concept interesting because there can be forums online that dissect, interpret, or maybe even misinterpret where stocks are going. And people always think that they know, but it's a common understanding of the stock market. You don't actually know where things are going. But it helps people break it down, as you said. And I think you should quote and trademark what you said earlier and not getting lost in the sauce of the of the waters of AI and stocks analysis. So
Yeah.
it's so helpful in breaking it down. And what I like about Find Stocks for me is that it's super user friendly. If you're ever confused at any point in time, there is an AI powered chatbot that is there and is able to assist you. And it's interesting because it's like you're speaking to an actual human. You don't get that robotic feel, and your question is not only answered, you receive advice on how to make the best choice. I think that's a very unique feature of Enea's website, and it's something that I haven't seen utilized as effectively before. And props to you for coding that.
Thank you.
The best way possible. That's a lot.
So you're saying basically you're making it easy for us to get rich, huh?
I'm making it easy for people to learn how to invest.
No, I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Because someone like me that doesn't come from a financial background or investment type background, I wouldn't know what goes into this. So having an app like this where it can show me the little basics, it can teach me, it can tell me what's going on and how it's working. It's major. It's a major key. Not everybody wakes up one morning and just knows how to invest or. And
I'm going to jump around a little bit with, what you guys talked about. First again, this perception thing that Dea said. Like, I've been investing in the stock market since I was 16 years old. And in the beginning, I was doing very well. But then afterwards, I started getting into these public forums like, Stock Twits or, Reddit. We talk about Wall Street Bets, but that's, a little bit more present. But, there are very charismatic people out there who are able to convince you in this idea that will lead you to, in a sense, to failure, that maybe that idea, you wouldn't come to that conclusion if you just listen to yourself, kind of thing. And that's where this voting aspect comes from, right? Because not only do we have, the social forums and people can, discuss and whatever, but you'll get the conglomerate vote. So you're not going to get, in a sense, manipulated, put that in quotes, by a charismatic person to make a decision that you otherwise wouldn't have. Yeah, I can actually see the wisdom of the crowds, right? So let's go a little bit about how the wisdom of the crowds work. We're talking about, this concept that is still very mysterious for humans at the moment, and we don't completely understand why this is the case. But if you've ever played this game, like how many jelly beans are in the jar, right? And you go to people and say, hey, how many jelly beans in the jar? And you ask the person, most people are going to be wrong by quite a significant amount. But if you get all the guesses of all the people you've asked, and if you've asked enough people, the average guess is going to be extremely close to the real number of jelly beans, right? Now, this is a little kid example. There's a lot of other situations that, wisdom of the crowds has been used. For example, there was a case where a submarine got lost in the ocean. I forgot exactly what it was called, but they basically use wisdom of the crowds by having multiple experts guess where that submarine was, and then they averaged out the guesses, and they actually went to the place that they had the average guess, and they were able to find the submarine extremely close to there. There's other big programs like the Good Judgment, which is I think it's a nonprofit that deals with this idea of wisdom of the crowds, and they are proving that with enough people making their educated guesses for certain geopolitical events in the world, we are more accurate and more able to predict the future of these political events or social economic events. We're better to predict these political, social, and economic events than experts who have classified information about those events. So it's this idea that, hey, like, the group as a conglomerate knows better than even individual experts on something. Went a little bit of a rant there. So
No, that's
yeah.
My question is, after Fine Stocks for Me, what would your new project be?
So once 5 stocks for me is done, well, first of all, I want to see 5 stocks for me prosper, because it's this idea that, big time companies have machine learning algorithms that make money for them with the stock market, but the people don't. So I spent a whole year working basically full time on top of my full-time job, building this algorithm that is able to beat the stock market and it provides these 5 stocks every week for users to view. And making this platform where people can educate themselves and learn how to invest. They can, in a sense, put themselves in a position that a lot of these billionaire companies and people have with their own algorithms and stuff like that. So I do want to see this prosper. Of course, there's like, if I'm able to get this to a point and I can say it's time for me to move on from here to some other company, there's a lot of things like, I have to, like, navigate and figure out.
But essentially developing something at the same time that could fix another issue or address another problem we're experiencing with AI. And right now, we're really happy to announce that sorry. We're really happy to announce that Enea is offering the subscription for free for those that are signing up during the summer. And especially in respect to the Albanian community and those that want to get involved, he's offering a major push to those that want to learn to be able to sign up on the platform in a way that's equal, democratic, fair, and founded by an Albanian. So thank you for that, Enea. And we're really happy to be announcing that here first on DGXM podcast.
We're getting on it.
Yeah. No, hop on it. It's free for now. Of course, at some point I have to make it subscription based because it's a business that requires a lot of computation in the back end to work. But yeah, I'm glad for you guys to try it out. And I'm really trying to push this idea that, hey, voting can be a good thing. Voting is something that can lead to generalized prosperity for humans in the future, in a sense. It doesn't have to have this negative connotation that we have nowadays. It's a very powerful tool that we don't use as much as we should.
Now, Enea, do you have a full-fledged team that works with you, or is this something you do individually?
It's basically just me. Yeah,
Really?
I have worked on this individually. I've done the front end of it. I'm not a front end engineer, but I've done the front end for it. I've done the back end. I wrote the machine learning. I wrote the chatbots. I've wrote the business plans, the legal stuff, from A to Z, basically. Yeah, at the moment. But I do plan, if like, I'm currently in the stage where I want to build the user base and potentially get investors on board. And once I get investors on board, I can actually have people hire and join the team to push this idea faster. Working on this idea while also having a full-time job obviously slows things down by quite a bit. So the goal is to work on this full-time and to speed up the development process, and as well as bring people on the team.
Yeah, like where do you see yourself with this in the next 10 years?
With 5 stocks for me in 10 years, like, if you're going to ask me, hey, what is one thing you want to hear, is I want to hear more people educated in the stock market and how to invest, right? Because there was some statistics I saw that said, what is it? 94% of people who got into investments post-COVID want the correct resources to actually know how to invest and, like, get the education that they want to invest. So have a population that knows how to handle their money better, right? Because as we know how economics of the world is going, it's becoming a more of a disparity between the rich and the poor, and we need to be able to, in a sense, handle ourselves and be able to make passive incomes as the layman that people are, without having the multi-billion-dollar companies.
And
Another thing I want with 5 stocks for me 10 years from now is to motivate people to use voting as much as we can and to wisdom the crowds as much as we can. We're talking about all important decisions to be led through voting, or not all, but the ones that we can lead through voting, have them be led through voting, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be a better outcome than just letting one leader make the decision.
I like what
And
you
it's
in terms of I like what you mentioned in terms of addressing disparity, because oftentimes there's an incorrect perception of entrepreneurs as being a certain way or being money driven, which is so strange because successful entrepreneurs, as we've said over and over, are mission driven, and they're gaining resources by adding value. So to be able to have a platform in which you're making revenue, but also allowing people to increase their income, have a side hustle, and become wealthier is amazing. And
Yeah.
it's breaking the stereotype and the idea that money is bad and money and power are bad, which we're trying to dispel immediately.
what was that COVID percentage that you just gave out before? What was that stat?
Yeah, it was 94% of people who want to get into investing basically also want the ability to do research on their own and provide the tools to do that research.
Yeah, because it was interesting when you brought that up, because I did realize during COVID, a lot of random people started getting into the stock market, started getting into cryptocurrency, started getting
Exactly.
into all these Doge coins and NFTs, and people had no idea what they were investing in, and people were losing millions and billions. And
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so it's interesting to hear that stat that you just brought up.
Yeah,
It
no,
just like it brought me back to that space.
people just don't know where to start. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things with Fine Stocks for me. Like, hey, like let's make it super easy for you to learn how to start, get there.
Yeah.
We have things like Robinhood, we have things like Binance and things like that, where anyone can use nowadays. Just hop on their phone and invest. There's so many more, again, normal people trying to get into the market, and I want to help them, educate them in learning how to invest. And there's also one more thing I want to add. Things like the stock market itself, like there are fields that if you open a book and you read enough, you can become an expert in that field and actually know how to do it. But there are fields that you really have to build your intuition, right? These are things like, for example, go back to fighting, right? You can read, Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings and Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, and read and watch a lot of UFC. You're not going to become a UFC fighter. You're going to become a good fighter, a good MMA practitioner, if you actually, go out there and practice it. And this idea of building a tuition is everywhere. It's in art, it's in chess, and to build it, you have to be provided examples of how it's done right. So with Fine Stocks for me, I'm helping people build that intuition by providing them 5 stocks that are good choices to invest in every week, right? So by looking at these stocks and learning why these are good choices, and being provided this simulant every single week, and to talk to chatbots, and to in a sense understand what is a good investment versus what isn't a good investment. That's the core basis of Fine Stocks for me.
Amazing.
Yeah, all of that is so powerful, and we hope people rush to take advantage of the opportunity to sign up for the subscription while it's still free, to be able to learn. And as you mentioned, apply that knowledge with practice, theory and practice at the end of the day. But to also get a bit more of a social dimension as to who you are, we wanted to ask you a bit about your connection to Albania. You mentioned you're originally from the South, but you're from Tirana. You were born in Tirana, correct?
I was born in Tirana, families from Chamaria from both sides.
Chamaria, that's really cool. Me as well. I'm also from Chamaria from both sides. When are you going to Albania next?
I'm going tomorrow, actually. I'm hanging out, going to Albania. I'm excited. I haven't been there in a year now, which is not that much, I keep, but like for Albania, that's too long.
I've never been to Albania yet, so I gotta go to Albania. I've only been to Kosovo. Yeah,
No,
it's tough, man.
I had my friend who was a mixed mutt from America, from every kind of culture, live in Albania, and saying he now wants to buy a house in Albania. My best friend
Yeah.
Orion, but you're not going to Albania? Like, come on. Pull up.
I know, man. I know. I'm trying. I'm trying. It's been a lifelong goal of mine. I just never got a chance to do it yet, but I
And yeah,
definitely
I
want to do
heard
it.
you like how to cook. You like to cook and you know how to
Oh
cook
yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
cook
yeah.
Albanian dishes?
Yeah, I mean, from living alone all the time, since like when I moved out from 18, like I learned how to cook basically. And this is also a passion I got from my mom as well. My mom loves cooking, so like, being a mama's boy in a sense, allows me to link up and have that middle ground with my mom. So yeah, I know how to cook. I know how to cook Albanian dishes, or like food that Albanians eat. We're talking about tuli, we're talking about burek, we're talking about tafkosi, whatever comes to mind. I can whip it out for you. Just let me know. I can also cook a mean steak though. I can cook the meanest steak.
You
Period.
better. You live in Texas. You better know how to
Period.
cook a steak. Otherwise, they'll they're
Oh
gonna
yeah,
toss you out of there, bro.
X me real quick. They love their red meat here.
Yeah, that's a big thing down there. But I have a question too, though. Since you're born in Albania, you came here at an early age. As a young kid, like what was your aspirations? Did you always see yourself doing something of this field, of this route? Did you have another dream in mind when you were a kid? Did you say like I'm gonna grow up and be this and that? Like what was your first thought or idea as a kid coming to America? Like, this is what I'm going to be now that I'm here. I have the chance to do it. Who's Enea? What's Enea going to be?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I moved here when I was 2.5, so I think I just wanted milk. But growing up, what I wanted to be was not computer science actually. Like I would tell people I wanted to be an actor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a judge, like this kind of things. I really chose computer science, my senior year of high school, mostly because I didn't want to focus on a specific field. With computer science, I was able to like basically touch any kind of field and to have my impact in whatever I want to do. If it's going to be health, it's going to be, like building systems for healthcare. If it's going to be building systems for fintech, like I am now, or things like that, again, going back to what I said before, like being able to have this programmer mind rather than learning programming languages, that's the most important aspect of it. And then once you develop that, then you can explore any field you really want to. So that was my motivation for computer science. And
Interesting.
philosophy, really, like I tell people, I'm like, a computer scientist by trade, but a philosopher by heart. Like I truly, truly mean that. Like, my end goal is not a Bugatti, it's not a Ferrari, it's none of that stuff. I want to just become a PhD professor at some college in philosophy and relax kind of thing, write my own books. That's the end goal.
Yeah, and I share that in common. I do imagine never actually retiring, but being at university at some point, even now, and teaching and continuously doing that maybe twice a week or so. I think it's a great way of not only keeping your brain sharp, but allowing people to learn from you and your experiences. I love academia in general. And yeah, just to close things off, but of course you can add anything else you'd like to say. You're going to be in Albania, which is going through a lot of transition, a lot of economic development, a growing tourism economy. But at the same time, Albanians in Albania often complain about lack of opportunity, which I think is twofold as a discussion. What do you think Albania is lacking right now in terms of growth and development, and maybe how can your field help invest in it?
Yeah, Albanians. I want to get a tattoo that will represent Albania, and I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it sometime in the next year. It's gonna be right under my heart, right here, and it's gonna be this little coffee cup, little espresso cup, and it's gonna have the Albanian flag on it and everything. And I think it really encapsulates my idea of Albania. Like we are this like tiny little population, but it has strong potency, and once people really meet an Albanian, it becomes part of their life. So that's kind of how I see coffee as well, in an espresso, so
That's good
Albanians are
philosophy there.
yeah, Albanians are hardworking. We're a strong little population, and I do hear all the time this aspect of like, you know, being trapped as an Albanian. You know, this really just has a lot to do with, you know, getting the motivation to sit down and pursuing something that you really do. You know, like you know, in Albania, walking out at Bloku on a Wednesday at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. versus a Saturday at 5 p.m. It's the same amount of people. Like, aren't you at work? You know, like get that grind on, you know. And I'm not saying get to the level of unhealthiness of like working on a goal like a lot of Americans do, but in a sense like pursuing a field and really trying to see what you can get do with it. Nowadays, you know, we also have the remains of previous you know, conscious understanding of or a misunderstanding of like lack of opportunity to pursue what we want, but that's just not the case anymore. You know, with the internet, with how easy it is to get information online, this is not anything besides a personal pursuit at the moment. You know, in the field of machine learning, for example, if Albanians want to get into AI or machine learning like I have, the field is much greener now than when I got into it, because there are amazing courses online, which are free, from Stanford to MIT to I think Harvard, but maybe Harvard's not like that. But like all these big colleges, you know, providing free courses to get into machine learning, you know, and I will definitely take advantage of those. We also, again, we have chatbots, and we can talk about chatbots about anything. If you don't understand a concept now in school, you can just ask it as an analogy, or ask it to explain it to you like you're 5 years old, and then build up from there. You know, it's really just pursuing it. And one more thing I want to add about the field of machine learning: it has changed a little bit nowadays than it was when I got into it, right? So a machine learning engineer in the past was, you know, exactly that, an engineer. They built it from scratch. I'm not saying, you know, making the matrix multiplications and doing the gradient, but I'm talking about like, we get the data, we get the machine learning algorithm, we train it, and we push it. Nowadays, it's becoming more and more like software engineering. So you need to actually learn how to take these Lego pieces and combine them together to make your own system. We have large language models are really strong. So, you know, getting this idea of how to combine different systems together, glue it together to make this product, very similar to how software engineers work. That's how a lot of the future machine learning and AI is also going to be. But yeah, I went a little bit of a rant there. I am passionate about Albanians, and I want, you know, us to, you know, stop blaming ourselves on, you know, our misfortunes, and just really just get out there and get it done, because we can get it done. I mean, again, we have Albanians in big positions in the world now. It's possible.
Yeah. Do you see yourself ever creating some sort of course or some sort of class where you can teach Albanians back home, maybe, what you do and how to do it? You ever see yourself doing something like that? Or?
All right, so we'll talk about a little bit of my side projects, okay? So, and actually, this is going to be a feature of the, you know, Find Stocks for Me, because right now, findstocksforme.com is live, but there is it's an alpha stage. It's not even the beta stage now. There's still much more development that needs to be done before I can even consider the official release, which will be next year. But one of the chatbots I will have on you know, Find Stocks for Me will be a learn chatbot. This would be a chatbot that, in a sense, keeps track of how you invest on findstocksforme.com. Again, invest as in simulated investments. It's not going to be real money, and it's going to point to you, hey, you do these things wrong, hey, you do this right, hey, I've noticed you have the tendency for picking out stocks in this sector, but they don't have these different metrics. Let me explain to these metrics. The idea is we can have large language models now with long-term memory using a technology called RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and that's developing a lot nowadays as well. but we can have personal mentors for people for any kind of subject. So if we're talking about, Albanians learning English, for example, we can make a large language model that, is individualized for each person, keeps track of you, and becomes your private tutor. That is definitely something that's possible. I'm making 2 of those very soon. I want to learn a different language, let's say Spanish. And to learn Spanish, I'm going to make this large language model RAG, retrieval augmented generation. I'll make an account on it. And then basically it'll keep track of my test scores, my quiz scores, what I got wrong, what I got right, what I have learned, what I haven't learned, and makes it completely specialized for you. So yeah, we have the example for language. We have an example for investing, which will be on 5 stocks for me. If people want to get into programming, something like this is still also possible, right? Let's say we make a large language model that is specialized not in English but in Albanian, but English is a very good language to be specialized in because programming is in English basically. We can make a program where it becomes a private tutor for each Albanian to learn, or anyone, doesn't have to be Albanian, anyone in the world, to learn how to program. This is in the realm of possibility. We just need people to develop it.
So the idea is it could just be online and it's accessible through one tutor that you code and then personalizes to each individual. You don't need a whole school physically built out there to be able to teach people. And that's the power of this field.
Yeah, like for example, at findstocksforme.com, once you make an account, it also makes a index. It's a vector index for that individual, keeping track of what they know, what they don't know. So it becomes a private tutor. Because, for example, I've been investing for many years, but there are some things I do better or worse than other people who've been investing for 2 years, let's say, or a year. I'm gonna have my personal tutor teach me things that I lack, and that person's gonna have the personal tutor teach them things they lack. Again, I feel like large language models, if anything, it's going to have the largest effect in education if it's done right.
Great. Enea, thank you so much for your time today. Have the most amazing time in Albania. And truly thank you for educating our viewers and us on so much that has to do with AI. I feel like we went through the whole gambit today of understanding what it is, how it works, and how it's used as a powerful tool, and even the ethics behind it. So catch them on findstocksforme.com and sign up for your subscription while it's still free. Catch you next time, and thanks so much for your time today.
And one more thing before you go. One more thing before you go.
Yes.
What's something to start investing in right now today for somebody that's a new investor?
Great question.
What's the first initial thing we should invest in right now?
Like suggested
I mean, look, like I think the majority of your investment should be in some conglomerate stock like VOO, which is basically S&P 500 kind of. It's like a conglomerate of different stocks, and then you just invest in that, and how the market goes, your money goes. It's slower returns. We're not talking about you're not gonna get 1,000% increase in a year. You'll get that 4 or 5%, but it's better than losing your money like 99% of people do. So that would be my recommendation.
Long-term investment. Nice. I think that's a great one.
Nice.